y New York City. Contamos con diferentes ediciones por zonas, impresas y digitales, donde usted puede leer las últimas noticias nacionales, internacionales y publicar sus anuncios para la comunidad. Atención empresarios, comerciantes y profesionales. Si usted desea aumentar sus ventas, llame ahora mismo al 1-888-900-2811, extensión 4, o visítenos en el www.latribunahispana.com.
Tribuna TV, 24 horas al día, 7 días a la semana, 365 días al año. Un mundo de información para ti, al alcance de tu dedo.
Escucha Tribuna Radio las 24 horas del día. Tribuna Radio desde cualquier lugar del mundo. Tribuna Radio en el www.tribunaradio.us. Tribuna Radio, la música que quieres escuchar. Tribuna Radio, la mejor programación. Tribuna Radio, programas de entrevistas. Para más información, llámanos al 1-888-900-2811, extensión 5, o escríbenos a sales@tribunaradio.us.
¿Te perdiste tu programa favorito en Tribuna TV? Esto no volverá a pasar porque ahora te presentamos videos on demand. Cualquier día, a cualquier hora y en cualquier lugar. Visita nuestra sección Videos on Demand en nuestra página web o en nuestras aplicaciones para Android y iPhone. Entra al nombre del programa que quieres ver. Elígelo con un solo clic.
I'm trying to emulate you, my dear friend, Roy.
Tribuna TV, la televisión en sus manos.
Well, anybody who likes him.
Sigue en sintonía de nuestra programación.
Está empezando el show del Dr. Roy Aranda, donde abordaremos temas sobre separación niños de padres, casos de violencia, traumas con los indocumentados, cómo resistir ante tiempos de pandemias. Llámanos en vivo al 1-888-900-2811, extensión 6, y haz tus propias preguntas al aire. ¡Comenzamos!
One day after Bastille Day, if that means anything to the viewers. But here we are, and you know, I'm glad to be here today, and I must report very happy that there's no rain, at least right now. You'll recall the last week I had to cancel the show. We had a huge thunderstorm here in the Long Island area, followed by Hurricane Elsa, and the amount of flooding and loss of power was just really too risky to go forward with the show. So I'm glad that we were able to cancel it and adjourn it for today. And I'm really glad that my guest Adam Adam Tavares will be introducing to you in a moment.
Sigue en sintonía de nuestra programación.
La Tribuna Hispana USA es el periódico para los que leemos en español. En circulación desde 1988 en Long Island y New York City. Contamos con diferentes ediciones por zonas, impresas y digitales, donde usted puede leer las últimas noticias nacionales, internacionales y publicar sus anuncios para la comunidad. Atención empresarios, comerciantes y profesionales. Si usted desea aumentar sus ventas, llame ahora mismo al 1-888-900-2811, extensión 4, o visítenos en el www.latribunahispana.com.
Good evening, my dear Tribuna TV viewers. Buenas noches, queridos televidentes de, como siempre digo, la famosísima Tribuna TV. Aquí estamos, here we are again on July 15, Julio 15. You will recall that the show was supposed to have taken place last week, July 8th, and fortunately I have my illustrious guest, Adam Tavares, who's an attorney, an immigration attorney. He's been a guest on this show twice before, so I'm delighted to have him back. And the topic is one pertaining to immigration, which we'll talk about momentarily. So fortunately, it's not raining. We don't have thunderstorms. It is very hot, muggy, and humid, but thank God it's not raining. I don't anticipate a power outage, which would have been really bad last week if we'd gone forward with the show. So I do encourage viewers to. We have several interesting slides to show, as I've indicated before to those viewers who are interested. Please feel free to take photos. Los que están interesados, por favor, sírvense sacar fotos de los slides que vamos a usar, de los carteles que vamos a poner para ustedes. Also, the show is being videotaped. It's being actually recorded on YouTube presently, and it will be available on YouTube tomorrow, on Tribuna TV's website, on Facebook, on Vimeo, and probably other electronic platforms. So again, if you're not able to take photos, or you find that some of the information is interesting to you from the slides, feel free to take screenshots once the video is up. So the topic that we have for today is is one on immigration, and the title is Immigration Today: Impact of Pandemic, Politics, and Law. I have as my consultant Peter Canaris. I'm giving him a shout out. Hi, Peter. I don't know if you're watching or not, but Peter has been a big help to me, and he helps with the preparation of the material. And again, Adam Tavares, Esquire, which means for attorney. So, as usual, I prepared an introduction and a dedication, which I'll read briefly, and then I'll introduce Adam. The word immigration is a household buzzword. The welcome sign on the Statue of Liberty that reads, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free," is at best an aspirational goal. We can only aspire to attain this. At worst, it's an illusion. What do you do with the very large number of undocumented immigrants living in the United States and arriving at the arriving at the border? And what about all the breaking stories almost daily in the news? We have considerable attention. It's been commanding the news pretty much on an almost daily basis. Working in the field of immigration demands an awareness of and sensitivity to diversity, cultural competence. Despite a hot socio-political climate when it comes to undocumented aliens, the country is highly divided as reasonable solutions are sought. And we'll talk about it. They continue to evade us, but hopefully we can start seeing some progress in arriving at solutions. Added to the multitude of stressors Hispanics experience and must endure, COVID-19 has been particularly unkind, and Hispanics have shown a disproportionately much higher level of impact to the pandemic because of many risk factors and conditions that can worsen infections. I believe that it's approximately 3 times as high as white Americans. The numbers like approximately 3 times, and blacks was somewhere in that area as well. So, moreover, the 11 million undocumented Hispanics who already face a multitude of obstacles are placed in situations that increase the risk of exposure to contamination and greatly limit access to resources available to most people. Along with my guest, attorney Adam Tavares, we will focus on current concerns pertaining to this highly sensitive topic that has been so prevalent in the news. I'm dedicating the show to all Hispanic viewers and their families, and indeed to anybody who has endured or encountered or been subjected to some sort of trauma in relationship to an immigration proceeding. So, puede sacar el primer slide. I wanted to introduce you to Adam. Pon el segundo slide. So, this is what Adam looks like, although you're going to be surprised because there's been a slight change between the photos. So I just wanted to put that up. And I wanted to say, puede sacar el slide. That should give an idea for the viewers. Puede poner a Adam que se le mire también a él. So, Oscar, I forgot to introduce you.
Yeah.
I've always introduced Oscar.
Hello, everybody.
Okay. That's Oscar. His English is becoming more and more proficient with every show. So you can see Adam's changed a little bit from that photo. He's got like that nice full beard. He said that he's emulating me. I don't know if that's true or not. On a personal note, I did want to say that Adam is partners of the law firm with a good friend, David Sperling, who's been a guest of my show several times. I probably know David for, I'm guessing, close to 40 years. It's probably been about that long.
Yeah.
Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, but we may go back 15-ish or so years, more or less. About that?
Yeah, about
And
that. Because I still remember.
I've known Adam through David and also independently through the Long Island Hispanic Bar Association, Suffolk County Bar Association. I'm a member. I've been a member of both. I believe I'm still a current member of both. And so I've attended many of their functions that were, geared towards attorneys. And I've had many occasions where Adam was involved in some functions that I had, fundraisers and things like that, and also through Dreamers. So, Adam, why don't you just say a couple of words about who you are and what you do?
So basically, I always like to start out that I'm first generation American. My mother came from Colombia. My dad came from Portugal. Mixed culture, household. They were both immigrants from their respective countries. And I've grown to respect them greatly because of their sacrifice. I was able to be where I am right now as an attorney. And they were just great role models, and they showed me what being an immigrant can actually be, right? Which is they came here not expecting anything. They basically worked really hard to get where they were, and I have nothing but respect for the immigrant community because of that. Unfortunately, as time has gone on, it seems like immigrant or immigration has become a bad word. I really want to hope. I hope that one day we can get out of that again, and they can be a source of pride. Because the experiences that I've had with many immigrants are that they are incredibly hardworking. They really want to just make their life here, give their children a better life, and I want to work my hardest to make sure that I can actually give that to the people I work with.
Well, I'm glad you said that because there are many myths prevalent, unfortunately. And, one of them is that there is a heightened amount of criminality, which is very inaccurate. Yes, the public has been fed with news reports about the MS-13 and gang members, but we're really looking at a very, very, very minuscule number when you look at the entire population of immigrants. We're really looking at a huge, huge number of people who are law-abiding, except for, having the unfortunate nomenclature being undocumented. I don't believe anybody is illegal. That term just rubs me the wrong way. But they're good people who love the United States, want to make this their country, want to raise their children to be gringuitos, and want to have a life here. And they come from horrible existences for which many have sought refuge here because the alternative was possibly face an imminent death where they came from. So, Adam, you were raised pretty much on a combination of Portuguese paellas and arepas and sobrebarrigas, huh? That was that was your upbringing between the Portuguese and the Colombian food, right?
Right, and it was a great experience. I got to see two very different worlds, but at the end of the day, they shared a similar work ethic, and I benefited great from it.
Okay. Adam, we have several slides for the viewers that I'm going to go through quickly that are informative slides that give some indication of statistics and numbers. I just wanted this for the viewers to have an idea in terms of la hispanidad, in Spanish, what we're really looking at in terms of the numbers. Oscar, por favor, tres. So here I've given you an indication of the Hispanic countries in the world, 2021 population, so this is fairly recent. You can see at the top of the list Mexico, and look at the huge number. Way less than that, we have Colombia and Spain, and all the way down to El Salvador. I've given you 15. So you can see for yourselves that we're really talking about something very significant, obviously. Oscar, por favor, el cuatro. I want to turn your attention to 4 now. I'm going to focus on the Central American countries, again, 2021 populations. The country with the highest population is Guatemala, followed by Honduras, and then you can see where we go all the way down to Belize. So at the bottom, the Hispanic population in the United States reached 60.5 million in 2019. It is estimated that by 2060, the Hispanic population in the United States will be 119 million. Now, mind you, in the previous slide, I gave you statistics of the Hispanic countries. If you consider the United States with 60.5 million Hispanics, it's really the second largest country with an Hispanic population, well above Colombia. Okay, so really it should be in the second spot if you go back to slide 3. Por favor, Oscar del Cinco. I want to draw your attention now to states here in the United States. States with the largest Hispanic population in 2019. California, look at the numbers. That is impressive. Followed by Texas, Florida, New York, where I am, where we're broadcasting from, is in 4th place, all the way down to Washington with close to 1 million. So I gave you the top states. Again, feel free to take photos or screenshots by tomorrow once the recording is up. Por favor, Oscar, puedes sacar el 5. And we're going to start now with some of the substance, okay, Adam?
That's fine.
Slide number 6. I want to draw your attention to some of the challenges. What are the challenges that Hispanics face? That's el número 6.
Get it?
6.
Okay.
Now, mind you, as I've said on previous shows, it's impossible to cover everything in one show. The show's approximately an hour and 10 minutes. But I give you what I think is a reasonable overview of a majority of issues that I think are important, including the statistic. So you have some of the challenges Hispanics face, the stressors that are related to immigration, discrimination, stricter policies. Again, the 11 million who are undocumented and the political climate that reinforces marginalization and stereotypes, an anti-immigrant climate. Many undocumented immigrants live in the shadows. Fear has permeated the lives of immigrants, and as a result of that, we are seeing that they have lower income, lower socioeconomic status, living in unsafe neighborhoods, inadequate housing, frequent movements. I won't read all of them. I just wanted to give you a sense of some of these. Language barrier, cultural barrier, legal status difficulties, all the discriminations, microaggressions, macroaggressions, and access to resources. If people are afraid that they're going to be hauled in by ICE or that they're going to be reported, they're not going to go out of their way to seek some sort of resource if they think that they're going to have to say what their immigration status is, or report if they're victims of a crime. Puedes sacar el slide. Adam, any comments to make to those challenges?
Well, what's also very important to understand is that, unfortunately, with the last administration, there was also fear that if they took any advantage of any of the resources that were available,
Adam, there's a little bit of a sound in the background. I don't know if that's from you.
No, that's fireworks in the background. Apparently, they have a bit of a celebration.
Oh, that's
outside.
what it is. Okay.
I do apologize. You know what? Do you mind if I switch rooms? Maybe it'll be a little bit less noisy.
Okay.
Just
Oscar, ¿no puede cambiar de cuarto? Él va a ir a otro cuarto. Por el ruido.
I do apologize. Okay. Let me just see if I can find a place that's a little bit less.
You're in the process of migrating right now. This is a migration.
Exactly.
You're doing a migration.
Okay, so I think it's a little bit more quiet over here. A little bit more plain, but how's that? Do you feel like you hear anything in the background?
I don't hear that noise anymore.
Okay, perfect.
So we were focusing on some of the challenges and stereotypes and limited access to resources, and I asked you to comment on that.
Right. So one of the other things that we have to keep in mind is in the last administration, they were really trying to crack down on this idea of the public charge. So a lot of families, a lot of people were very afraid of taking any resources because they feared that it may affect their their application for a legal permanent residency in the future. So I had a lot of families that were very, very afraid to go and reach out and actually get help. Because they feared that it would come and actually disrupt their immigration process. Right now, thankfully, with this administration, we're dealing with something that's a lot more understandable, and people are kind of understanding that they can actually ask for help again, which is not even that common. To be completely honest, a lot of people come here understanding that there's nothing owed to them. They try their best to kind of make it on their own. They're incredible. I find immigrants to be incredibly resourceful, and so it's really based on a very big stereotype, which I think is really funny because it doesn't make sense, right? A lot of people say, "Oh, they're taking our jobs," but at the same time, they're milking the system. It's one or the other. You can't have these paradigms exist at the same time. And so it's really a stereotype. It's really a misunderstanding. The other very important thing that I want to say is that we've seen record numbers of scammers, of criminal activity, because of the fact that people feel that they can't go to the police. We've had, I can't tell you how many times I have had a client call me saying, Social Security called me and they said that they're going to come after me and they're going to arrest me if I don't give them gift cards. And I have to kind of tell them, no, that this is just a scam. And it's very important to understand that right now predators are rampant, and I mean scammers
that
are very
applies to
rampant.
everybody. People who are not technologically savvy
right.
because of the pandemic. They see things. They're more reliant on their phones, their iPhones or iPads, and they get scammed.
But unfortunately, the immigrant community has been a prime target, and the biggest reason is because scammers know that if they take the money from an immigrant family, there's a very low likelihood that if that immigrant family doesn't have documentation, they may not go to the police because of fear that they may be arrested. And it's really important for us to spread the word that this is an opportunity for our immigrant community to actually legalize. There's something called the U visa, in which if you were a victim of crime, if you help the police in every facet in trying to solve the crime and persecute the person who has wronged you, you can actually get a green card. And so it's really important that message is put out there, so people are not afraid to go to the police.
That's the
police are there
visa?
to protect you. The U visa, yes.
Okay, there's also a TV.
There's also there's a T visa, Violence Against Women's Act, which is another way a person can legalize if they were married to a United States citizen or a legal permanent resident. The T visa is dealing more with trafficking. So if you were trafficked into the United States and you help the authorities against that trafficker, you may very well have an opportunity to legalize in this country.
Right, the authorities
unfortunately, trafficking.
The authorities benefit because they are tracking down criminals. So that's
Exactly.
the benefit for them. So in return, they are providing a service and a benefit to the immigrant.
And really, it's a benefit for everyone. I think it's very important that our immigrant community understand that they're not the only ones. If they're getting scammed, 100 other people are getting scammed. And by nipping it in the butt, we are helping a lot of people avoid that scam. And so you're not only calling the police for yourself, you're calling it for the community. It's really important that we all spread that word.
Okay. Let's take a look. Thank you, Adam. Let's take a look at the next slide, and we'll see the impact of COVID-19. El 7, por favor, Oscar. So, I already, one of the things that I'm going to allude to something that you said before, Adam, also, is that there's a disproportional representation of Hispanics in critical occupations through, COVID-19, as the result of COVID-19, healthcare, food service, manufacture, cleaning, janitorial services, agriculture, travel and hospitality, private household work, personal services, building services. Many of the individuals who are undocumented, nevertheless, are the ones that are sent out to work, and they're the ones that have been told you have to go here, and they were exposed to other people in close quarters without masks, without social distancing, and they went ahead, picking the products and the produce and, doing the kinds of work that we depend on. So that if you didn't have them, who's going to be doing it? So that this is, I'm going back to one of the things that you said. It's not that they're taking away the jobs. They're doing stuff that nobody else wants to do or will not do it for whatever it is that they're getting paid for, with those kinds of risks. Less access to benefits. Again, many of these people who are workers are not entitled to workers' compensation if they are injured. So that's just one example. Lower income. They're going to be paid minimal or next to nothing. They're put in situations they have to continue to work even if they feel sick. They're excluded from governmental aid. And, lately we've been receiving a lot of benefits through this new administration. There's a lot of wonderful things that have been happening to people who have been struggling financially, and those with children, who need to take care and pay for their children. 18.5% of Hispanics are unemployed. 1 in 5. This amounts to 1 in 5. That's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Central American Solidarity Association survey. You can see some of the numbers that I put there. Over 80% need support with rent, over 60% with utilities, close to 60% with food. Pew Research Center, 40% of Hispanics took a pay cut compared to 27% of the overall population. 20% lost their job. 29% lost their job compared to 20%. So puedes sacar a slide. Adam, anything to add to that in terms of the COVID and the impact? We've been in COVID. We've been in a COVID existence now for about 15 months, give or take, approximately.
Right, and you,
or
yes,
16 months, somewhere in that area.
And you can see the heavy effect that it has on families. I know that there's a lot of immigrant population that want to go back home to their elderly mothers, and they can't. And it's heartbreaking to know that they have to choose whether their family here that they formed, or having to go back and actually see their ailing mother back in their home country, who is dealing with the pandemic probably worse than we are. And it's a very heartbreaking situation. We have a lot of people who have been petitioning their loved ones, and the consulates have been closed. No thanks to Trump, who unnecessarily closed down the consulates, more to advance his own agenda than to really stop the spread of COVID. One had nothing to do with another. Which is another myth and another lie that has been propagated. He did that purely in order to create or maintain the nativist, isolationist ideology that he's been hampering for God knows how long. And so, it's a very difficult situation. And like you said, our community, the immigrant community, is on the front lines. There's no excuses. The work needs to be done, and they get it done. And so, that's very important that we all keep that in perspective, right? Especially when all this legislation is coming out about legalization, we have to keep in mind that a lot of these benefits, this legalization path to citizenship, is not something that is not earned. Yeah. There's a lot of sacrifice involved in coming to this country, and I don't think that's enough. That's not talked enough. Everybody looks at it as a great privilege, but we really need to understand that there's a lot of sacrifice. People are leaving their families. They're leaving a country that they've known all their life. They're not doing it lightly. They're doing it because they fear to return to their home country, or poverty is just so rampant that they just can't even feed their kids, and they realize that this sacrifice of coming here, of starting from scratch, is worth it. But by no means is it a walk in the park. There's a lot of I know some immigrants who don't even rent a room; they rent a bed for 12 hours, and then switch out with another person just so that they can save enough money. For a better life, to build something in this country. And it's really important that message gets out there too, because this concept that once a person comes here, it's smooth sailing. It's not. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of sacrifice, and I don't think that's talked about enough. And I think it's very important that is understood as well.
Just to add to the COVID situation, we don't need to rehash how bad COVID-19 has been and the impact and the numbers and the statistics and all that. I'm not going to belabor that. But there's a bit of a misrepresentation when we talk about close to 70% of the population in the United States having received at least the first vaccination, one. Because it misrepresents pockets and areas and communities where there isn't access, or where people may not have the educational savvy to follow it, or they're not aware of what's going on, or they haven't really been adequately informed, or they have misinformation, misperceptions, or they are geographically not situated within a comfortable, reasonable distance of hopping from your home, to go to a CVS or something, Walmart or something around the corner. So we have some areas where we're looking at numbers of vaccinations that are maybe 50% or less or fewer. And also, I did want to point out as well that things are not entirely hunky-dory. We are dealing with that Delta variant, that presently about 50% of infections in the United States now are from Delta, which is way more infectious than the original strain and far deadlier if somebody gets contaminated with it. So I did want to give certainly a shout out to our Hispanic viewers, who may be somewhat hesitant or haven't had the opportunity to do it. Please, it's really something, especially now with that Delta variant running amok, to do something. I know that the research that I recently saw in the news, the scientific research in the news, indicates that a good 99+% of people who are vaccinated have not come down with Delta, whereas those who have experienced the infections and or mortality is the percentage of people who are unvaccinated. And it's applying more so to younger people because they were not the ones running around initially looking to be vaccinated. The priority was given to older, more fragile, medically ill people. So that's something I just really wanted to put it out there. But above and beyond that, and maybe you can add something to this as well, Adam, I have many patients from several different countries in Central America and in South America. And they all tell me abysmal stories about the COVID-19 situation where they come from: Ecuador, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras. I know that if you have a computer and you go to the internet, you can always get information. COVID-19, type in COVID-19 and the country that you're interested in, and you'll see what the statistics are. Fairly up to date because they give you current numbers. And they also give you threat levels. And Adam, just about everywhere that I look, the threat level is 4. And threat level 4 is severe. Anything that you might want to add to that? I mean, are we looking at something that's just fewer vaccines available in Central America and South America? What's going on that it seems to be worse there?
Well, what's really important to understand, the same reason why people come to the United States is the same reason why we're having these issues in Central and South America. And to just be completely honest and completely transparent, it's really corruption. You're talking about governments who in the best of times, they don't complete works, projects. They don't pave the streets. They don't take care of their nation. Because there's more obsession with enriching themselves and taking advantage of the position that they're given. It happens very, very often. And what ends up happening is, due to this lack of organization, this corruption, we tend to see poor spread of vaccinations. Also, the biggest thing is basically lack of faith in government. I don't think that it's very important to understand that this lack in faith in government plays a big part. People don't trust the vaccines, right? They don't know where it's coming from. There were some scandals that people were getting salt water injected into them, saline solutions, instead of the actual vaccine. And this is more poisonous than anything else. When you're having decades of people not trusting their governments, and then all of a sudden having to trust them with their lives and their livelihood, it becomes more and more of a problem. And I think it's very important to understand that mixed with the fact that there is not as many vaccines available. They're not securing as many vaccines for their population. That all mixes together to create the situation we're in, right? And it's quite sad, but unfortunately it's a reality.
Okay. Oscar, por favor, el próximo slide. I'm going to put slide 8 up briefly, and I'm going to have Oscar take it down momentarily. But basically, you're the expert on this, so I'm going to defer to you. This is going to be your show at this point. I'm just briefly going to say some of the things that we'll talk about, and I'll be asking you questions. Things on some of these important cases that have been taking place, and some questions that I have to ask you about what's happening at the border and what's happening with the number of people being processed and whether or not cases in immigration court are in person or virtual and how much of a backlog, some of that stuff. So I just wanted the viewers to take a look at it. And puedes sacarlo, Oscar. I'm going to be asking Adam, with whatever time we have remaining for the show, which is we still have a fairly good amount of time, so we certainly can take our time on this. So Adam, you provided me with a couple of these cases. What are some of the most salient cases? You talked about Nis Chavez versus Garland and a couple of other cases, Mendez Rojas. So fill us in on some of the state-of-the-art challenges and cases and rulings that are relevant and that our viewers should be informed of.
I put Ms. Chavez on the top of the list because that one has the greatest impact, in my opinion. It's a Supreme Court case. Surprisingly, it was it was a majority case. Conservatives actually joined in. Gorsuch was the one who wrote the opinion, and I never thought I would say it, but I agree with what Gorsuch said. And so what Gorsuch basically said is like, you're expecting immigrant populations, most of them unfortunately don't have the proper education, to fill out an asylum application form, and if they miss one question, it becomes invalid and you send it back to them. In this case, it's one page that the government had to get right, and they were getting wrong for about 30 years. It was incomplete. And so he said it's not fair that you're basically having a different standard for the immigrant population and a different standard for the government. And it's not just any piece of paper. This paper, the NTA, is literally the most important piece of paper because it's the paper that starts the proceedings in immigration court. Okay, it has all the accusations. It basically has the basis of what the government is saying the person should be removed for, and it missed, where the person needed to appear. It missed what date, what time. It was incomplete. And for years, what the government had said, yes, it's incomplete, but when we send the notice of hearing, it becomes complete, and therefore it's okay. What Gorsuch and the Supreme Court decided on April 29, 2021 is, no, it's not okay. The only way you can perfect this defective NTA, this defective document, is by issuing a new one. And I'll tell you why it's so significant. The reason why it's so significant is that cases since 1997 that have been ordered removed, cases that may still be pending, technically have a second chance at life, because technically this document that started the proceedings were defective, and therefore we can try to reopen the case based on that defect. And it's just revolutionary. Right now we're just trying to wrap our heads around it. But what makes it also very powerful is the fact that there's something called cancellation of removal. And usually this document, the NTA, is what cuts the time. Now, what does that mean?
NTA for the viewers is notice to appear.
Notice to appear, yes. The minute an immigrant gets that notice to appear, technically, that is when their time is cut. That means they cannot accumulate it any more days, months, or years towards their 10 years of continual presence in the United States. But because this document is defective, right, if it is defective, then all that time counts. And therefore, we have people who have orders of deportations that may be eligible for cancellation of removal. And what do you need for cancellation of removal? You just need to prove 10 years of continual presence. You have to show that the person is a person of good moral character. And you have to show that they either have a parent, spouse, or child who is a United States citizen or a legal permanent resident, and you have to show that child's parent or spouse will go through something called extreme and abnormal hardship without the person who is right now in proceedings. So this is why I am trying to get, I put that at the top of the list. I think it's absolutely amazing. It will give a lot of people a second chance at life. If you know anyone, or if you are a person who, for some odd reason, you got that order of removal and you said, no, this is it, I guess I have no other chance, this is what we've been waiting for. And it's really important you go to your nearest attorney, make sure that defect exists, and if it does, to try to reopen your case as soon as possible. It's so effective, actually, that for the next 180 days, I think they made the announcement early July, DHS is actually joining motions to reopen if the person can show that they're prima facie, which means that they have the elementary elements of the cancellation of removal. So that means if they can show that they have 10 years of continual presence, if they can show good moral character, and if they can show that they have one of the qualifying relatives. DHS is actually saying we will join in the reopening. So this is, we didn't think that Christmas would come this early, but it did. We really want to take advantage. We really want to help as many people as possible.
So it means that the non-defective notice to appear is when the clock starts ticking, and that anything prior to that was defective, the clock is eliminated. That you can't count that.
Well, you can't count. Well, it's that
if it happened 2 years ago, they can't say, well, you already had 2 years of notice.
Right. So we're trying to figure out what else are we going to use for the notice to appear. Technically, one can argue that we should be able to terminate the case, given the fact that the piece of paper that starts the case is defective, right? And so this is actually a big thing.
The language was clear. That's what the majority went with. That the language was clear. It said that you have this notice to appear. It didn't say that it has to come in stages. So you had exactly. The assumption was that you had a completed, accurate notice to appear with everything that was required.
Exactly. And right now DHS is trying to limit it, right? They're trying to say it's only for cancellation of removal, but we're fighting tooth and nail to make it as expensive as possible, because it really is a great decision. And so that's important for the viewers to know, who are maybe sweating,
anticipating that they don't have all that much time.
Right. Well, remember, right, when you're dealing with cancellation of removal, you're trying to get 10 years of continual presence. And the only thing that was stopping most of the people was this paper, the notice to appear. Because the minute you got served with that piece of paper, it cut off your time. You cannot accumulate any more time towards your 10 years of continual presence. So now that's gone, you have all this time that you've accumulated since you entered the country. And so that's why it's such a very important piece. This is such a great decision from the Supreme Court. So moving on, Mendes Rojas is absolutely amazing as well. This is an agreement that was made in which the government has agreed that they weren't properly informing people who had been detained about their 1 year. Now, what does that mean? When you enter the country, you have technically 1 year to apply for asylum. And if you don't, for the most part, you're disqualified from applying for asylum. There are exceptions. There's something called exceptional circumstance. There's also change of circumstance. There's also something called legal disability if you're under the age of 18. But for the most part, they're very strict about it. So Mendes Rojas was the settlement that was created in which the government admitted, we weren't properly telling clients, hey, you should get an attorney, you should get legal advice, because you only have, the time is ticking. You have 1 year to apply for your asylum. So they've basically extended the window for the 1 year, April 22nd, 2022. So if you said, I missed my chance, right? If you entered the country, you were detained by ICE, you were interviewed by ICE, and let's say you let the year pass, as long as you had a credible fear interview or you were detained by ICE, you may have a chance to actually apply for asylum and be timely, even though it's been after the year. So that's another great decision. It's not really a decision, it's more of a settlement. It's basically has helped out a lot of people.
Did this do something to undermine defensive applications for asylum?
Well, these are defensive applications, right?
Okay.
These, for the most part, these are defensive applications. They've extended it to April 22nd, 2022.
Okay.
So if you were in proceedings, you have until April 22nd, 2022, for the most part, to apply for your asylum. So please go to an attorney if you haven't done yet, and try to get that done so that you can take advantage of this agreement. Okay.
A huge difficulty that I've seen in many of my patients is that if they're stopped, say in Texas or Arizona, and that's where they may initially indicate that they were the victims of one of the qualifying reasons to seek asylum, they don't speak English, they're not given this stuff in English, then they're not afforded legal representation because the law does not provide for that. They leave, they come to maybe Long Island or some other state, and at that point in time, they lose touch. Time passes. They're not aware of what the law is, or they're very young. They're minor. They don't speak English. They don't read English, so they don't have the vaguest idea what the law is in terms of applying for asylum, and that seems to me to be very draconian. It's just something not right about that when you're looking at people who've moved, who come in, they migrate once they get here. They don't speak the language. They may be young and uneducated.
Well, I think the other very important part to understand is that, there is a population that unfortunately are even illiterate in Spanish. So, I'm not saying that DHS is not giving them things in their own language. The only problem is that it's not enough. Sometimes you're dealing with people who don't have the education. They don't know how to read in their own language, and they're getting these papers in which it could have been in English. It really doesn't make a difference, right? And it's really important to understand that it doesn't take much for an interpreter to come and explain to them how immigration works and what laws, what rights they have, and what they need to be doing, and we're feeling, it seems like there's going to be a transition and there's going to be more focus into that. But while that's happening, luckily we have Mendes Rojas to kind of help cure that problem that we had before.
So good recommendation, certainly for anybody, is to touch base with an immigration attorney.
Of course, yes. By all means, please. It's very important. Please make sure you reach out to an immigration attorney. What I tell people, immigration attorneys, we're like doctors, right? If you don't think that one attorney is giving you good advice, you should always seek a second opinion. Okay? It's very important that you feel comfortable with the person that is representing you. If you feel like you're getting the wrong advice,
the options progressively decrease with time if you don't seek legal representation or legal help and you're not informed.
Right.
It becomes, the window becomes narrower and narrower.
And this is very true when it comes to children. It breaks my heart, but there's people who are 21 years old who come to me. And I look at them and I said, if you would have only come to me a year before, I would have gotten you your green card based on special immigrant juvenile status. You have everything, but you are over the age of 21. And because of that simple fact, I cannot help you. And it breaks my heart every time it happens, and it happens way too often. So that everybody knows what special immigrant juvenile status is. If a child is under the age of 21, if they can show that they're better off here than they're in their home country, if they can show that there's an adult taking care of them, if they can show that one of their biological parents has either abandoned, abused, or neglected them, and if one of them have actually died, because it's legally similar to abandonment, they can actually apply for their green card. The family court will recognize them something called a special immigrants juvenile, and from then on they will have to just do a Form I-360, and then from there they can actually legalize to become a legal permanent resident. So moving on, with the other thing I really want to talk to, seeing that we touched based on COVID so much, there has been an epic stall in immigration court. Okay, it started since April of last year and has lasted until recently, July 6th, 2021. This has caused a backlog of 1.3 million cases. This is a historic backlog. It's never happened in the past. Courts have never been closed for this long. And what's happening right now is that DHS, or Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Justice are understanding that they can't deal with this many cases. And so they are instilling something called prosecutorial discretion, in which they are actually prioritizing cases. And those cases that they find are not top priority, they're actually closing down. Now, what does closing down means? It means they're taking it out of the calendar. They don't want to deal with it right now. They want to focus on what they view as the priority cases. What are the priority cases? For the most part, it's the ones that deal with border security. So we're talking about recent entries. What they've labeled as recent entries is anybody who came after November of 2020. They're focusing on drug traffickers. They're terrorists, right? Just the worst of the worst right now. And then the rest, they're going to evaluate based on certain mitigating factors whether those people will have their cases closed or not. And what are some factors that they're looking at? They're looking at the length of stay in the United States. How long have you been in the United States? If you're the primary breadwinner for a family, right? So if somebody depends on you, if there's somebody who is very ill and you're the sole provider for them, they've listed 10 mitigating factors, and it's actually a very great tool if right now you're in proceedings to close down your case. Depending on the situation, you may even actually renew your work permit while the case is closed, right? So it's a great opportunity. It should be explored with your attorney, and it's something that is also helping us out a great deal. So the reestablishment of prosecutor's discretion is something we've been waiting for a while. It existed during Obama. Unfortunately, after the second month of Trump, it completely went out the window, right? Trump definitely didn't like the idea of prosecutorial discretion. And so that's really important. So the other thing to keep in mind is the MPP right now. We're still trying to figure out exactly what's going on with it. Technically, Biden has stated that the MPP, or the Migrant Protection Protocol, which had all these migrants go down and fight their case in Mexico, which is a ridiculous idea. It should have been abolished. But we're still trying to feel it out and see how the administration is dealing with cases of people who have re-entered the country after being put in that protocol. So there's no definitive answer on that as of yet, or I don't know about it. And there's a lot of changes that have been happening very recently. I touched upon special immigrant juvenile status is still alive and well. The Trump administration had tried to actually hinder it or actually limit it to kids under the age of 18, but thanks to a matter of RFM, that was basically thrown out. And as long as you're under the age of 21, you have a chance at trying to legalize under special immigrant juvenile status. When we're dealing with status of paths to legalization, unfortunately, when it comes to American Dream and Promise Act and the Farm Workforce Modernization Act, the House has been great. If I'm not mistaken, they've been passed in the House, but they're dead in the Senate. It's very hard to get anything done in the Senate these days. It's incredibly polarized. And so I really don't like talking about what's in those laws because they could very well change. There's a lot of compromise going on, and what has entered is not necessarily what will be passed and what it will be signed by the president.
Well, in some instances, they're doing, you want a little bit of immigration, make a change over here. So it's like they're tacking immigration onto other things.
Right, exactly. So, I tell my clients, I can't really tell you what's going to be in the immigration reform, right? That finally passes and gets signed by Biden. If I could, I would be playing the lottery. It's something that is not it's really hard to kind of predict. Now, the one thing that I do tell clients that is very important is to prepare for any immigration reform. And there's certain things that we have kind of seen are very tried and true ways to prepare. It's not necessarily what's going to be in the immigration reform, but it's still a good idea to get this information. So the first one is basically accumulate your presence in the country. So one of the biggest problems that we have in the immigrant population is that we try to burn our tracks. There is not a lot of people that hold on to old receipts or statements or anything that shows their presence in the country, and that's a big mistake. You're trying to make sure you document every single year that you're in the country, because that is going to be something that can help you in the future, especially if that's a requirement in an immigration reform. So I know it sounds counterintuitive, but the more evidence that you have that you've been here for a long time, the better chance you have in certain types of remedies. So please document that. Make sure that you have it. Make sure you're collecting it. Make sure you're placing it in a safe place. Make sure you're making duplicates. Make sure you're scanning it. Make sure you're using the cloud. There's many different strategies that you can use in order to make sure that that evidence is secure. The second thing that's very important is any immigration processes that you've done, anything that you've done with immigration in the past. If you've ever been arrested by immigration or detained by immigration, it's really important to have all that documentation. It's essential in order to make sure that there's nothing getting in the way of any future legalization. If you have to reopen a case or anything of that nature, it's very important. If you don't have that documentation, if you've lost it, there's something called the FOIA. It's called the Freedom of Information Act. We can actually request that information from DHS, from the Department of Homeland Security, and get a CD. And in that CD is basically your whole record, your whole archive. And it's really important to understand that that's incredibly important for us as immigration attorneys, because it makes us understand, what we can do for you, realistically. So even though it may not be of help right now, it will be help in the future. And it takes months for you to get that. And every moment is precious, and you don't want to waste it. So it's better to get it now before it becomes a great demand, right? Because I'll assure you, if there's an immigration reform and prior immigration information is necessary, there's going to be a humongous backlog of people applying to get their archives in order to continue that process. And if you're in that line, God knows how long it's going to take. The other thing that's very important is criminal record. If you've ever had a criminal record, it's really important to have all the your certificates of disposition showing what the results of those arrests were. Because that the result is the most important part. The case was dismissed. If you were acquitted, then that completely changes the nature of your criminal record, because technically you don't have one. And there's a big difference between a violation, a misdemeanor, and a felony. It's very important to understand that having that documentation is really important to kind of establish, the severity of the crime, whether it should be used against you. And even if it may have been severe, time has a big deal to play with that. We've all made mistakes. If there has been a considerable time since the last arrest, then one can argue something called rehabilitation, which is very important in anything we do when we're dealing with discretionary.
Adam, I had one such case with David, that it involved a DWI, and there was a 1-year delay. Which I thought was wonderful, because it gave the person an opportunity to attend a DWI program and alcohol rehabilitation. And I ended up testifying on that, and I was asked, and I said, back then, back then he was removable, but presently he's done everything to demonstrate that he is a competent, law-abiding person, and actually the case was successful. So there are things that can take place, but obviously you have to be open and honest with your attorney about these things, because the last thing that you want to do is all of a sudden you didn't say something and then you're removed.
Right, and that also brings a very important point. When dealing with immigration, psychologists and psychiatrists are essential. Social workers as well. In trying to help the community. And I always tell my clients, if they've ever been a victim of abuse, the importance of going to a specialist to kind of heal those mental wounds. And it kind of does two things. Number one, you're getting the help you need, because it's the psychological toll is not only taking it out on yourself, but you're taking it on your kids many of the times, unfortunately. And it's not because you want to, it's more of an unconscious thing. It's really important to heal those wounds with professionals. But secondly, you're actually developing evidence for your case, in which a person can actually write a report and explain and document your abuse in order to help you in your asylum. So it's very important to reach out to professionals like yourself, Roy, so that they can get that help they need.
Well,
Not only for their own.
What I like to think of as a team approach. You have the client, the attorney, and the psychologist or mental health expert working in sync. I've seen cases where, like a mental health professional did not inform an attorney that the person didn't show up to appointments, and then all of a sudden there's a hearing, and where's your report? So things like that. There has to be ongoing communication and collaboration, teamwork.
And also the other thing is, it's not all psychologists and mental experts are created equal. Unfortunately, there's only a few, like you, Roy, who have this legal training as well as psychological training that really help, craft the case, right? Ask the correct questions to the clients. Make sure that you're getting them right evidence or the right information in order to form a really well-made report for what is necessary for immigration court. And
the picture that's given has to be credible.
Exactly. Oh, of course, always. But it's really important, because sometimes, I'll give you a perfect example. I had a client come to me, and she basically told me that she was, that her husband was very abusive physically, right? I asked her, well, were you ever sexually assaulted? And she said no. Feeling the hesitation, I asked her I say, have you ever had sex with him when you did not want to? And she said yes. It's very important to understand that culturally, she didn't think that she could be raped if she was in a relationship with him. And that is something that maybe any other mental expert may overlook, right? But a person who is more well indoctrinated with maybe the culture or the way of thinking,
it's called cultural competence. You have to be culturally competent.
Exactly. So that is very important to understand. That's why it's really important to be very careful with which psychologist you're dealing with, because it really does affect the outcome of a case or even a report. Getting back, the last thing that I would say to people that is absolutely necessary in order to make sure that you're prepared for any immigration reform is having a actualized and valid passport. It was a big issue back in the 1980s with reform with Reagan. They had lines outside the embassies. The people were getting lotteries just so that they could actually see the consulate. And it's really important to do it now before there is that need. Make sure that you're constantly keeping your passport updated. because you don't know when it's going to become important or necessary. And it's always good to have a valid document. Even though it may not be valid for immigration purposes, it's still valid, right? So that's very important to understand.
All right, Adam, we only have a few minutes. I have one comment and a question, and then we'll go to the resources. The comment that I have is, basically I wanted to let the viewers know that for people who are here and are undocumented and they worry and fear the possibility of an ICE stop and an ICE detention, you have to prepare for this. You have to prepare your family. You need to let them know where your properties are, what information you have, what to do if you don't come home from work one day. You have to have some sort of a plan, some preparation, so that your family, upon not seeing you, knows that there are things that they have to do. So you prepare a plan. You can look up the information on the internet. There's plenty of things from associations that help undocumented in terms of preparing in the event that there's an ICE stop. The other thing, and it's very quick and it's very hypothetical, and then we'll look at the resources, but following what's happening with Haiti, do you have some sense of how, if at all, will this impact immigration proceedings in the United States?
Well, like anything, I'm guessing it's going to increase the amount of migrants coming into the United States, right? Whenever there's chaos, whenever there's an issue in the home country, whenever there's instability, it leads to people wanting a better life for themselves, fearing their own lives, fearing their own security. We saw when it happened, when we had the earthquake in Haiti, when we saw the civil war in El Salvador, when we had hurricanes in
But it's going to tap on our resources and already backlog of cases. So I'm sort of wondering if it's sort of going to start prioritizing some of these above cases that have already been on hold for 1.5 years or 2 years.
Well, the thing is that we're still
hypothetical, because I don't know.
Right. Exactly. So the issue is that we don't know. We don't know how these things are going to get prioritized. We're still waiting to see exactly what immigration is doing. They're making a lot of changes. A lot of them are very positive. One of the things I really wanted to touch upon, and it was not on the list, but I really wanted to make clear, was that back in 2018, and I know we don't have that much time, but I'm going to try to make it as quick as possible. Back in 2018, the Attorney General Sessions actually wrote a lot of decisions that were very detrimental to the integrity of immigration. He attacked domestic violence as a valid form to ask for asylum. That was the matter of AB. He attacked basically having family-based particular social group. He even attacked procedural. Right, we couldn't do motions to close or terminate without DHS giving the okay. Luckily, recently, all these things have been overruled by the new Attorney General, and we're back to normal. So it's very important to understand that although changes are happening slowly, right, because we wanted this to be done by day one, they're happening. And so it's really important that we keep that all in mind. And that also, those overturnings are very important. So if you were given an order of deportation under those time periods, in the 2017, 2018, 2019, because of one of these decisions, we can literally go back, do a motion to reopen based on the fact that these cases have already been overruled. So that's something else that we have to throw out there.
You don't have to hide. You don't have to go into hiding.
No.
Okay.
And it's very important. Right now is the time to figure out, okay, what should I do? How do I try to reopen?
Take a proactive stance.
To legalize.
A proactive
exactly.
stance. Oscar,
right.
por favor, el último slide. Let's look at the resources. And el slide 9. And here, I put how to contact me, how to contact Dr. Canaris. I decided that I would give the viewers, if they're interested, an article that I wrote Living in the Shadows, Plight of the Undocumented. I give you the source there for accessing it on the internet. I give a lot of details about immigration law, about different kinds of immigration proceeding, hardships, asylums, VAWA, with examples. So there's a lot of information there if you're interested. Adam, there's the contact information for Adam in his office and in Woodside and Central Islip with the phone number. I also gave you a resource, the American Immigration Council, with their website. And of course, as I've done before, references to New York State Psychological Association, location, website, the American Psychological Association, the parent of all of the states and regions, and my own Suffolk County Psychological Association, the contact information. This is my own regional association that I'm very fond of and I speak highly of all the time. Puedes sacar a slide. Adam, any parting comments?
Oh, just to make clear, we don't have only offices in Central Islip and Woodside. I'm actually in the office in Riverhead. We have one in Huntington Station. We have one in Hempstead. Please just look us up at the law offices of David M. Sperling, and you can see the list of offices that we have. We have a great team. We're always trying to get better, of course.
You've also been instrumental in raising funds for Dreamers and for people to go to college and things like that. 40,000 or something in that area.
It was one of my proudest moments, and Roy, you have been a great benefactor. A great philanthropist when it comes to that area. We always thank you for your support. You've always been very passionate about young kids, making sure that they're moving forward, and you've always been very helpful for the immigrant community, and we're very lucky to have an advocate like you for us.
Thank you.
And this is really important. It's really important to spread the word, even if you don't have personal immigrant or immigration issues. It's really important to let people know this is not the time to hide. This is not the time to lock yourselves up. This is the time for you to
shadows.
Stop living in the shadows, because the only person that benefits you living in the shadows is unscrupulous people who want to take advantage of you and our community. It's really important to understand that we have to get out there. We have to be vocal, and we have to unite. Because even though great changes are happening, we have to be heard and we have to be treated as human beings. I always say, and last thing, and I know I keep on droning on, Ryan, I do apologize.
That's okay. I'll send David the bill for the overtime. Don't worry about it.
Is the fact that the right tends to demonize us, the left tends to angelify us. And the truth is we're human. Immigrants are human, and that's enough. You don't have to be an angel or a devil. We can respect our humanity.
We're people.
And that's all that matters.
We're people.
Exactly.
We're people with dreams.
We're people with dreams.
And we have things to offer this society.
And we have to give people space to be human and support them in that endeavor. And so, thank you, Roy, for giving me a platform. And, if you ever need me again, I'm here for you, okay?
Thank you. Oscar, ¿alguna despedida?
Que tengan un lindo fin de semana.
Okay, so to my viewers, thank you for joining us today. Adam, thank you so much for your wisdom. I learned several things. I have to tack it on now to my resume and to my database. The thing is that it's always an evolving field. So to the viewers who have immigration-related kinds of issues, don't assume that things are stagnant. What's said today might be different next week. You have to always stay on top of it. Make sure that you have this state-of-the-art information. If you go onto the internet, chances are you'll open up a link of something that happened in 2020, and it won't necessarily be accurate. Go to an immigration attorney if you really need legal advice. Choose wisely. Talk to people. And certainly there are solutions. There's information that's out there. I wanted also to share the viewers that the next show will be on July 29, and I will be dealing with a very interesting topic on July 29. I have, like, as a guest, Dr. Jess Diller-Kovler, who's coming back a second time on the show, and that promises to be very exciting. Future shows will deal with other issues of current interest to all of us. So again, everybody, be safe, stay safe, be careful with the pandemic, be careful with Delta, keep an eye on your community, on your neighbors, on yourselves. Don't be shy about asking for help if you need it. Contact me, contact Dr. Canaris, contact any of the references that I gave you. Contact Adam Tavares if you have any more issues. And with that, I say good night. Be safe and be very careful with the heat wave. Be very, very careful with the heat wave. It's a potential killer. Don't assume that it's all fine. Make sure you're hydrated and stay out of that hot sun. Good night.
Thank you, Ray.